Good afternoon. Welcome to another Brew At Two. Today is going to be, hopefully, go well. Now, everybody cross your fingers because I've got the two little twins off school, off nursery because the nursery is closed for the day, while they wait for a confirmed or not confirmed COVID case. Such is life at the moment, you just can't plan things to go right fully. Life is like that as well most of the time, especially with children, especially as a mum. You can plan as much as you want, but sometimes those plans go awry and, you have to fall back to hoping and praying. And today, I have been telling you all through the week that I've got the lovely Kate coming on to talk about her journey from trauma and how she's healed through her trauma and is now stepping into being an author, a published author and coach and practitioner for hypnotherapy and lots more. I'm going to get Kate to introduce herself, her business and where she's at a little bit more, and I will bring her in now as time is of the essence today because I don't know when I'm going to get interrupted by a small child. So hello, Kate.
Hi.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more? Introduce who you are, what you do.
Yeah.
And how you became a mum in the groove.
Yeah, so I'm Kate and I'm a trauma-informed clinical hypnotherapist, practitioner and domestic abuse coach. And I help women to heal from the trauma caused by domestic abuse, but more importantly, heal the wounds caused from childhood trauma, which is essentially what's led them into the position that they're in and what I was in myself, which, you don't relate to it. And again, relating that back to, mums in the groove, it's very, very much our children's happiness. Like I say, this all stems back to childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So, trauma isn't always what we think it is. We automatically think of, domestic abuse, toxic, being around toxic relationships growing up, being around addictions growing up, sexual abuse. That's what we kind of link it to. And straight up neglect. That's what we generally tend to associate childhood trauma with. And it's not always the case. It can be really, really, don't forget, we're talking about a child's mind here.
Yeah.
We're talking about a rational adult's mind. How a child can interpret something for one child is very different to how another child would interpret it. So it can be something really, really simple, like mum and dad are really busy, doing work, and they've got no time to play with me. And that child could then translate that as, I'm not important. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not lovable. It must be me.
Yeah.
As opposed to, rationally thinking adult self, you now can look back and say, I didn't have a bad childhood.
Yeah.
You've got to look at, how did you feel as that little child growing up? And what emotions did you attach to it? What stories did you attach to it? And more importantly, what burdens did you attach to it? Because you can find that children can take on certain roles, whether that be the golden child, they're put up on this pedestal by their parents, or they can be the scapegoat. And, that is a hell of a lot of a burden on that child, because they then become people pleasers. Being golden child is quite a big burden. Yeah. It's a great role to have, but that's
then you worry that you're going to slip up, I suppose, at any given point. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I can totally relate to that with my own dynamics, and more so with my soon-to-be ex-husband's dynamics. I mean, he has three other sibling brothers, one younger than him and the other two older. And his youngest brother was very much golden child, very, very much golden child. My husband was very much the scapegoat. So them two are very close. But when you look at it and break it down, my husband would have been very much in competition. Well, if I keep him with my youngest brother, well, maybe then I'll get better treatment from my mum because he's golden child. So there was pressures on both sides. Everybody's behaviours are as a result of what they went through as children, essentially. That's not to say that that's an excuse for bad behaviour. It's absolutely no excuse for bad behaviour. I've done I've done 2 lives actually on my Facebook profile on the connection between ADHD and autism in children.
Yeah.
And this is strong. I've done quite a bit of research with this in an ADHD group. And I asked the question, how many of you have your children have witnessed domestic abuse in the home, addictions with one or the other of the parents in the home, or you yourself had a traumatic pregnancy? And the vast majority of them, the commented said, yeah, either all of them or there was one of them elements that they picked out. Like I say, trauma can manifest from anything at all. It can be something as simple like what I explained, or it could be at school where they maybe don't feel they're not very good at a certain subject, and maybe they feel like, oh, well, I'm stupid compared to the rest of the class. It can be little things like that. I mean, obviously, we all know as adults that we can't be good at everything. But to that child, if everybody else is like really good at this one subject and they are really, really struggling with it, if they're translating that as, well, it's me, I'm stupid, I'm thick, I'm this, I'm that, and it's deemed as inescapable, and they're made to feel in class as not good enough, not worthy enough, not, that will encode as trauma.
Yeah. So and I suppose if that's not healed in your childhood or through your adolescent years or early adulthood, that's when the problems start to form, I suppose. As you become an adult, and you, like you say, you go and you seek the relationships that mimic almost our childhood and how we were brought up ourselves, or you go completely the other way. There's
with trauma, if there's trauma encoding from childhood, one of 2 things usually happens. Either they become very heavily codependent, so that is where they've been a very much a people pleaser as a child, to seek approval all the time. They will carry that forward to adulthood, and everything everything about them will be, I'm proving to everybody else that I'm good enough. And this is where the dynamics in a relationship become very toxic, because you get to the point where you're like, well, if I just be a better wife, if I just love him more, if I just do this, if I just do that, maybe the abuse will stop, because it must be me. But if I do more, this will stop. So if you go the other way and you become more narcissistic traits, because again, it's all caused by the same thing. It's just that the difference is the narcissist is very, very much wanting everybody else to validate to them that they are good enough. So if anybody doesn't keep them up on that pedestal, they very quickly discard them. They will villainize them. They will be the worst person in the world. So the codependent, being the very much overgiver and the people pleaser, that's music to a narcissist's ears, because they're like lapping it up. It's very much keeping them up on that pedestal and keeping them from being exposed to those emotional wounds from childhood, which are mainly abandonment wounds that they have.
How would you go about if this is resonating with anybody, what would they first do? What would they do to start stepping out of those like grooves almost that they've got, that they've got themselves in? What would you do what did you do, because you've been in that situation? How do you find the strength to move forward and to step out of that?
See, this is the thing, it's something that domestic abuse shines a massive, great big spotlight on these insecurities, but these insecurities will have been there for years.
Yeah.
And when I look back and I trace it back, I know through business, because one of the stories that I'd attached to my own childhood was that I had to be successful to be worthy of love. I had to be successful to be, if I wasn't successful, I was invisible. Nobody knew I was there. Nobody was interested in speaking to me. And that kind of stemmed back to my athletics days when I was running competitively, when I was younger, and obviously, and also back to my school days. I felt very invisible in school. The only time people wanted to know me, I felt, was when it came to the inter schools running things and the sports days and what have you, because I was so good, everybody wanted to know me then. So my system had very, very much associated that with that, and that had followed throughout my whole life. And whenever I felt like my back was against the wall, of feeling like, oh, okay, yeah. Because I'd associate, well, if I'm not successful, then I don't get any attention. Nobody notices me. That's too painful to my system. And my system had learned from a child that when I'm ill, the pressure of being successful came off. It just went. And I still got, although I wasn't successful when I was ill, I still gained attention from my dad, and it didn't go with the ignoring element. So I would always get ill. I'd always have Crohn's flares. So it was always manifesting when I wasn't even realizing it. That's the crazy thing. Obviously, the domestic abuse shone a great big light on it. And when I look back at all my relationships, they've all been of that sort of not as bad as this one, but all been of that sort of nature, where there's been either an element of me fixing them, because my ex-boyfriend from before, my husband, he had an addiction problem as well. So I've always been, as a child, a fixer. I've got to fix everybody, because I can
find somebody to fix.
Yeah. So it's to break out of the domestic abusive relationship. It is very, particularly narcissistic, it's very difficult because of the way they play mind games. Mm-hmm. There's a cycle of abuse, and if they're consistently abusive, then that's easier to spot, walk away. But when they have periods of drawing you back into that fantasy, and they do it in such a way that you end up questioning your own reality. So a really big part of being able to pull away was to understand the psyche of my abuser.
Okay.
And keeping evidence as well, keeping evidence of the abuse that I got. Because when you are doubting yourself and thinking, oh, I can't be that bad, because this is what he's saying, he sounds very, very sincere. So maybe it wasn't as bad as what I'm making out. Maybe I'm blowing this all out of all proportion. But when you look back at evidence, you very clearly see that, no, actually, no, I'm not blowing this out of all proportion.
No.
So the keeping evidence of what you've gone through is absolutely key, but for your own sanity, really, to make just to confirm that you're not going nuts, if anything, because they're very good at making you feel like that. And it is by design. It's by design to keep you there, to keep you from moving anywhere. And then I say the other big thing is understanding what's behind it, and understanding that actually their behaviour, and this doesn't just apply to partners who are abusive or or have narcissistic traits. This can apply to anybody in life, who upsets our nervous system or makes us feel less than good enough. We have to look at their behaviour and realise that actually their behaviour is just really a reflection of how they feel about themselves. It is no way about you. So although it's being reflected out onto you, it's not because of you.
It's like a child that has an unwanted behaviour, I suppose. Yeah. It's not the behaviour, it's not the behaviour that they're not behaving like that towards you because they don't like you. They're behaving like that because there's something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's something bugging them. Like they might be hungry, or obviously, and in a relationship that's not the case. As an adult, you know that you're hungry, you know that you're thirsty, but do you know that you need someone to cuddle? Do you know that as an adult, sometimes if we've been through that trauma, we can forget that actually we need human contact. We need, especially like over the last 18 months, we've learned that actually, yes, we do need human contact. It is a human need for all of us to have that nurturing. But yeah, I can, having never been really in that situation, the way you've explained it, it really resonates, like from a child, as a mum towards a child, the behaviour behind the need behind the behaviour.
Obviously, I one of the main areas I specialise in is obviously domestic abuse.
Yeah.
But trauma's trauma at the end of the day. And as I just touched on.
Yeah. I've got a visitor. He's found a seashell.
Oh, right.
Thank you. Don't trip.
As we touched on very briefly there, that it can be
anything.
Our response to our children and it's something I'm very, very aware of now with my own daughter. We respond how we have been taught to respond, essentially, and that may not be right for your child. That may not be right.
We're all different.
At the end of the day, and you may be responding in a way and thinking, well, okay, it's like you've got to discipline your children, but if they're being disciplined and they get distressed, it's not to say you've got to stop disciplining them.
Yeah,
it's then knowing the
tools. You need to find a different way. Yeah.
It's not really you've got to, there's only sometimes there's only a certain way you can discipline a child, really, at the end. Things like locking them in the room is a no-no, because that can be, I'm shutting you away from me. I don't want you near me. That can initiate abandonment issues with children. Again, leaving babies to cry, again, that will initiate abandonment. Now, people do these things because, even like, parenting experts supposedly will say, leave your baby to cry. And that can cause abandonment issues in children. So people may have done things without the intention of being,
cruel.
But it's about understanding, and this is where it's really important to understand your child's nervous system and where they are on that emotional regulatory ladder. And seeing, well, okay, so when you've actually got it here, I can show you just this. I actually have a better version that I use with people. Louisa did a bit strange, this.
The wrong way round, yeah.
I know what she means now. So this is where they're at safety.
Yeah.
Up
Let
here.
me just make you full screen.
So this is where they're at safety at the top of the ladder. This is where they're in fight or flight. So this is where they're usually expressing anger, aggression, violence. And here is where they're feeling sad. I mean, when I ask my daughter, what do you feel here? And she'll say, I feel sad. And I'm just like, she feels sad. And this will, if you were to relate this to us as adults, this would be where we would feel we're not really wanting to socialize with anybody. Your classic symptoms of depression, essentially. Yeah. He is where, if we're here, we'll be judgmental towards people. We'll be criticizing people. We will be angry. Yeah. We are. Yeah, that's where we are. So it's understanding. Well, at different stages of the ladder, what emotions do you feel?
Yeah.
What situations make you feel like that? And then what's more important is what do they feel at the top of the ladder, and what sort of things makes them feel that safety at the top of the ladder? Because when they say, no, I'm here, or I'm here in the middle of the ladder or bottom of the ladder, you then know what they need from you to bring them to help. Ladder. But what's the important thing to understand is, so it's not as simple. I'm just going to use this wooden one just because it's so if they're down here, okay, we can't just rapidly go back up. Yeah. So
climb each step.
So it's the same with ourselves. If we're down here and we're in a depressed state, we're very low, we're lacking motivation, we can't even be bothered to get out of bed in the morning, we can't be bothered to get a shower, we're really, really, really low. We can't expect to go from here right the way up to feeling on top of the world. You will go up here and you will potentially start to express emotions of anger. And a lot of people can think, oh, I'm going backwards, but you're not, because you've got to come up the ladder. Yeah. So, one thing that, people in who have got a broken marriage and they've got shared care, for example, of the children can notice is, particularly when obviously the other partner is very abusive and displaying behaviors, they can find that their behaviors when they're with the abusive parent are very good, very very good. Yeah. But when they're back with the parent that they feel safe with, they become more they act out more, they become more aggressive, and it can look like, well, why are they always behaving like this with me, but they're good with him, and and you can't.
They've got the comfort.
Exactly. So when they are there and they're behaving good, they're down here, they're in freeze mode, they're in freeze. Yeah. They are, I can't step out of line. One thing my daughter used to say was, we've got to keep daddy happy. She used to say a lot, we've got to keep daddy happy. Mm-hmm. And she was always kicking off with me. But you see, she felt safe with me. So she come back up the ladder to a bit more to safety. So whereas now, we still have times where I can bring her up the ladder, but she will drop down. She'll hover between the two. But she never drops right down below. To the bottom. Yeah. So that's what you do tend to find. And this is why it's so important to understand, one, your own nervous system, because if we're dysregulated, they're going to mirror our behaviours as well. Because we've got mirror neurons in the brain, so they mirror behaviours.
What we're feeling. And I've noticed that with mine. I've had depression and anxiety, anxiety more than depression. And I've noticed now I feel well, that in the, like, looking back, or when I feel well, when I come out of a panic or whatever, or an anxious moment, I can notice my children's behaviours like go up and down with my own. So I can, knowing that now, it's fine for me to say, you can look and take the time. When you're in that moment, it's really hard to
in the moment
to take that time.
In that moment, they've activated a wound within you.
Yeah.
Your behaviors are all your system wants to do is make you feel safe. They don't rationalize you talking to a child. It doesn't rationalize. So the only way to stop that is to deal with the encoding. Because then the amygdala won't respond instantly. Because although intelligently, you can think, oh, I shouldn't be I'm dealing with this here. This is irrational. What am I doing? But logic, emotion will always override logic every single time.
And I had like a realization yesterday. I put it on my Instagram last night. We were out for the day. I was out for the day with my little ones. Well, all four. And for a moment, I looked at my phone and it came up with a notification from a friend that said, have you seen the nursery? It might be closing because, there might be a COVID case. And then I could feel it in the back of my neck. I've got to do something about this. What am I going to do with my children tomorrow? And in that moment, now I am feeling more, better in myself and starting to, fit in self-care and know how my emotions dip and flow. I was able to like talk to myself and go, no, I'm not dealing with this now. I've got all my children here. They're safe. They're right at this present moment. This doesn't matter. I don't need to deal with this right now. And I was able, and I put my phone away, zipped my bag up, and started pointing out the cows in the field because I knew I needed to like get my head out of that. I'm going to start snapping at the kids because I'm trying to sort this out now, and I'm going to ruin our day out. And I'm going to blame the kids. In previous times, I would have gone, well, they've ruined it because, and not realizing that it was actually me and my trauma of opening my phone and seeing this like message that I now need to sort out when actually we're on a day out. I don't need to sort it at all. So you can, I can see how you can grow through these traumas, these anxious moments, and start being able to talk to yourself and like get yourself out of that cycle of I'm going to look at my phone or whatever, that controlling moment.
Yeah, you can through consistency. You can.
Yeah, it's not overnight. It's not going to be an overnight thing, is it?
But the problem is when there's still encoding there. I had this conversation actually with he's a very well-known public speaking coach in the corporate space. Okay. And obviously he's got quite a traumatic childhood because he's very open about this. It doesn't mind me saying it, but his mum was one of the murders of the Yorkshire Ripper murders. Yeah. So you can imagine his childhood was not very pleasant.
No.
And he was in prison. He got into trouble, as a teenager, and obviously when he came out, that's when he kind of started to turn his life around. So, but of course he's very much put on this pedestal all the time, and he has a huge following, bolstering him up, keeping him up there. So when you've got that, and this is where the consistency comes, when you've got that consistency of you're around people who are bolstering you up, you're around people who believe in you and are praising you and giving you that
building you,
that's that positive belief system. You can pull yourself up. You can. However, if that encoding is there, all it takes is for one person to come along and say and validate what that old belief was, and that's more painful. And the reason it's more painful is because you've gone from up here, right the way back down here. Whereas when you're constantly telling yourself the same thing every single day, or, you know, I'm a waste of space, or whatever that story may be, somebody validating what you're telling yourself already is like, okay, well, I don't know what you've just said, but it's like, well, Emily, you don't tell me why you already know.
Yeah.
You already think about myself. So it's less of a hit to the system. Whereas when you've built yourself up and everybody around you has built you up there and put you up on this pedestal, and everybody's holding you up there really high because of the people you're surrounding yourself with, you can think that you've overcome all these problems until something in your senses, and it can be literally something, because what the brain does is it takes snapshots of an event.
Yeah.
Representing.
It's like a reboot of a computer.
Yeah.
It says restore these tabs from what they were when it shut down, I suppose. They go, your computer opens back up to that last download.
Well, I said yes. So essentially the encoding's already there. And when we could be walking down the street, and let's use the extreme of somebody who has been raped, and it was with somebody with a certain accent and a certain hair color, certain skin tone, and they're walking down the street, and it could be way in the distance, and I hear an accent exactly like that person. That will, and even though their conscious brain, they may not have even clocked that person, but their sound senses has picked up that accent from way back in the distance, and it's alerted the amygdala of we remember this, this is danger, and it will respond accordingly, like it is back in a real dangerous situation. Doesn't know the difference between real and what's not real.
No.
Just takes a snapshot of those events, and it will, anything representing those snapshots, it will respond accordingly. So until those AMPA receptors that are basically embedded on the outside of the amygdala are pushed back inside the cell, those will stay there and act like beacons.
Yeah.
And as soon as the amygdala is alerted to that specific snapshot, it will be off. Okay.
And I suppose that's where your practicing work comes in. Your, the hypnotherapy and.
Well, actually, the hypnotherapy doesn't do it. The hypnotherapy doesn't do it. It can't. Well, it's correction. I'm going to be accurate here. Okay. Yes, hypnotherapy can deal with trauma if you are dealing with a highly skilled and experienced hypnotherapist. There aren't many around.
No.
That's it in a nutshell. There aren't many around. I know some. The hypnotherapy I do, and I am good at hypnotherapy. Could I deal with trauma just with the hypnotherapy? No, I couldn't. I say I do know people that can, but this is where the psychosensory modalities come in, like the EMDR, brain spotting, havening techniques, which I use.
Yeah.
And I've actually adapted my process to combine bilateral movement in with the havening. And I seem to get a better result with combining those two things in. But what those do is they slow the brain frequency down to delta. So we're making the brain more pliable. We're causing brain plasticity. And that enables us then to, through certain languages, that you use. So if you use somebody, maybe if they're using techniques, or them, they're using just general distraction techniques, or meditation techniques, guided meditation techniques, and use the data that they've gathered from the client. You can then reframe things with the amygdala, with that part of the brain, and make it believe something different.
Yeah.
But you can't. So doing a reframing exercise won't work if you can't access that part of the brain. So just simply so you could do a reframing exercise with hypnosis. You can do a reframing exercise with just like a guided mindfulness exercise, but you're talking to the wrong part of the brain. That's not the part of the brain that's going to go into where we're going part where the encoding is. Push those back inside the cell so they're not on high alert.
Yeah.
What we're basically doing is we're accessing that part of the brain where the encoding has taken place and saying, okay, we don't have a problem here. This is not how we remember it. It's not there anymore. That's essentially what we're doing, and it's because the plasticity is there. We're able to
push it back.
Process is able to push those back inside the cell.
Fantastic.
Whereas without that plasticity, they're literally infused because there's no flexibility in the brain. So you not only can you not access that part of the brain, but you can't move those AMP receptors. They're stuck. They're infused.
If anybody wants to work with you more or find out more on this, can you leave your links in the comments?
Yeah. I mean, I've got a free workshop actually on the 12th. We're not going through any trauma work, but this is just a general resilience building exercise, which you can adapt for. You can use as yourself, and you can adapt it for your kids as well. So that's why I'm specifically going to do this one, so you can adapt it for yourself and for the kids as well.
For the children. So if you leave the links in below, when we finish this video in the Brew At Two page, people can pick up and learn more about the work you are doing with the trauma, and access that free workshop. But now I want to talk about the book.
The book,
because you've got a book.
I have.
Along with all your work, you're a published author.
I've not quite just yet. January has been published. Finished the first draft. So that is it's going to be called the Domestic Abuse Breakthrough Formula. And it literally takes people through the whole process from building up their resilience, because while you are, so this is where all the mindfulness exercises come in, because it gets you out of your emotional head and back online to your rational thinking head. Because one thing you need to be when you are exiting a very dangerous situation is rational thinking. You can't be in the emotional part of your brain. So this is why it's the first thing that I cover is let's get you regulated. Let's give you the tools that keep you regulated. That's not going to fix the problem. That's just going to be something that keeps you stable, allows you, when you do get back into the emotional part of your brain, you can bounce back. The more consistent you become with it, you develop this bounce back ability. So yes, things will still affect you, but when you have these tools and you go to them when you're feeling like that and you use them consistently every day as well, you will learn to bounce back really quickly. And the quicker you can bounce back, the quicker you can get back into the rational thinking brain, deal with the problem at hand without putting yourself in danger and your children in danger. So there's that. And then I take them on to understanding their abuser, so that they can now look at it and say, well, actually, okay, well, they're not like this because of me. They would have been like this, whoever they're with. So, it doesn't matter if it's me or anybody, they'd still be like this. So that's a big help as well to people, is understanding, well, actually it's not about me.
Will it go out as a book as well as a downloadable product?
It will do.
I was just thinking, I'm having never been in that situation, if a book is on your nightstand, that's not going to be the best form of getting out of that relationship, surely.
No, it's a download. It's downloadable, and it's in the Kindle version, and obviously they can buy the hardback. It also takes them through obviously a safety exit plan as well, so that if they are still living with their abuser, the process they need to go through to make sure that they can safely exit. It takes them through elements with the kids as well, and how to, understand how these situations affecting the children. And then it takes them on to their boundaries. Boundaries are a big one.
It's setting up for new relationships.
Even when you get exiting the relationship, because your boundaries go out the window. You have no boundaries. They rule the show. And you start to implement small boundaries before you leave, and you slowly build on them. Slowly build on them. And then we take them through their younger self. So that's dealing with the inner child, and healing the inner child, healing those wounds, finding out where this has started, because the problem's never the problem. And this is, the first thing I ever did was hypnotherapy training, and we learned that in hypnotherapy. The problem is the problem. You could have a fear of spiders, and actually that's not your actual problem. No. It's something associated from childhood, believe it or not. Because you've got to think of the emotions. Well, what's the emotions? What's the story I'm attaching to this? When did I first start
get that fear
with myself, and when did I start feeling these emotions? And that's what we need to deal with. That's what started this encoding. So we go through all that process, and then I move on to nutritional elements. Because one of my backgrounds is nutrition as well. So I don't go heavily into nutrition. I'm covering the main aspects of the brain, the nutritional aspects we need to consider for dealing with addressing inflammation and improving the brain function generally nutritionally.
And I suppose, well, like anything, just life in general, the self-care of being nutritional when you're eating and exercising or getting outside into the fresh air, those elements must be key to like starting that new life almost after you've exited this relationship that has probably pushed you so far down.
Oh God, yeah. It's little things like people can have, which is in lockdown, things. Obviously domestic abuse has been on the rise, but also addictions have been on the rise, and suicides have been on the rise, unfortunately, since lockdown. And that's not because of lockdown. That's because lockdown has shown a
aggravated
on the wounds that were already there. So if people are, you see it all the time on Facebook, on social media, where people are admitting that they drink alcohol every single day, and they'll say, "Oh, the kids are driving me crazy," or "I've had a bad day at the office, I need a drink." Well, that in itself is a dependency problem, whether they want to admit that or not. No. Unfortunately, it is a dependency issue. The brain has given you permission to do these things as a means of self-soothing something within you. So that drink, for example, is stopping you from feeling something else. It's numbing you out. And that can applies to food addictions. It applies to any addiction, shopping, whatever it may be. It applies to everything. It's a part that the brain's using to soothe you in the moment. All it does is think that, okay, so I need you to feel better now. So what
hit can I get?
Yeah. What do I remember made you feel better? I know that made me feel better. Doesn't rationalize that there's consequences to those behaviors. So for things like drink as that example, it wipes out B1, wipes it out. What B1? We need B1 for cognitive function. So you see there where yes, a habit is soothing a wound, but not obviously.
But it's also killing something else.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's keeping you in that state where you're constantly going to keep being drawn to it. Which will make it harder for you to get back into your rational thinking head, because your cognitive function isn't on point. Coffee wipes out B1. So these are little things that people just aren't aware of, and they do all the time. How many people have several cups of coffee a day? It's going to impact their cognitive function. So
as
it's
well as anything else, that's just one of the things. Yeah.
On top of all that, yeah. So it is I've always talked about, our health generally, our health and well-being as a very big jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
And it only takes one part of that jigsaw puzzle to be out of alignment to knock it all out of kilter. I mean, I'm a prime example of that. Because I do nutrition and my dad's actually a doctor of nutritional science, believe it or not. All my ducks are in a row. In fact, my diet and lifestyle is better than my dad's. And he's got a PhD in it. But, for me, it was the stress. The stress and the trauma that had literally, I was diagnosed so nearly 3 years now, it'll be 3 years in November, where I had a perforated bowel, led to me having a stoma operation. And 3 weeks later, I was diagnosed with a rare tumor in my leg, which I tested. It can only be caused by a gene flaw or a freak incident. I tested negative for the gene flaw. So according to the medical profession, it is a freak incident. Well, there's no such thing as a freak incident with your health. Everything happens for a reason. Disease.
I know.
In the body.
I've been saying we've been taught. I'm no picture of health. I do like food that's not great for me. But we've been saying we've been saying for years, it's okay to eat, chocolate or crisps, but it's not. Everything has, unless you are eating fully plant-based, what our ancestors ate, we are putting things into our body or surrounded by things, even our clothes with the plastics and stuff like that. We didn't realize, 20, 30 years ago that asbestos was bad for us. But now we're learning about it. We're trying to find different ways to live. And I think until the world gets back to that more natural way of living, these diseases and things, and, things like the virus, these things are going to be a part of our lives, whether we like it or not, because, we live in a world that is not natural.
No, we don't. And the problem is as well, doesn't apply to all doctors. You do get obviously some that are more open-minded. But, unfortunately, there's so many people in the medical profession that think a pill will fix everything.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it won't even fix it. All it's doing is treating the symptom.
Masking.
Yeah, it's putting a sticky plaster over the problem.
This is why I one of the people that have got me where I am today is Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. My doctor was great at looking at the reason behind the symptom. So, I had anxiety. She sent me off. She made me read his stress solution book. And I read his book, and then I read his next book, and then I was hooked on his podcasts. And he believes in treating the actual problem rather than masking the symptoms or treating the symptoms. And, I think that's the way forward.
Is a big jigsaw puzzle again. Big jigsaw puzzle. Dr. Rudin, who I did my trauma, the bulk of my trauma training with, he's been doing some studies with some neuroscientists, and they're about to publish the studies. So I believe they found the link between autoimmune disease and it's a chemical called glutamate. That we release during trauma encoding and trauma activation. And it's that toxicity of glutamate in the system that they've associated and linked between that and autoimmune disease. And I can tell you firsthand from my own experience with Crohn's disease, the minute I have a trauma response, that's it. I feel instantly in my gut because of the vagus nerve runs from the base of the skull, from the amygdala. The amygdala communicates with the vagus nerve and said, okay, we're in fight flight. Okay, you need to switch off the digestive system now. sends that signal, slows down all the organs as well, slows down the immune response, slows down our ability to regulate inflammation. That's the process that happens. So when you think of that's the power of the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
Like fight or flight. Is it any wonder stress is so strongly linked to disease? It's no wonder, really,
exactly.
isn't it?
No.
And that's not including this glutamate toxicity that he's found. He's done obviously research with these neuroscientists. Just from that alone, just from that process alone of what the vagus nerve does, because that's the brake system on our sympathetic system. Yeah. So, if our thought process and our senses around us are constantly flagging alarm bells to the amygdala, we're always, and this is the thing, we get so used to being in that state.
Yeah.
We don't realize we're in it. That's the thing. People say, oh no, I'm absolutely fine. Okay, so let's look at your parts. So are you somebody who binge eats or eats loads of, doesn't eat healthily, and you emotional eat? Are you somebody who needs a glass of wine just to wind down? Are you somebody who is addicted to shopping, who can't stay off Amazon? Mm-hmm. Those are parts, and those parts are there to protect you from feeling something. And this is where people get caught out with trauma. They can think, oh, well, I feel fine. Okay, so why are you doing these things? You're doing these things, your brain's giving you permission to do these things to soothe something. It's just that, so you're in fight or flight, but your system, you're so used to it, you don't realize you're in it. It's the norm to you. We're born in that state. So if our caregivers aren't calm, regulated, and, teach us how to, be our true self, curious about the world and compassionate, and if our caregivers aren't of that nature, then how are we supposed to? We have to be learnt that. We have to be taught that. So how do we be any different? We can't. So our system remains in that state. Yeah, the sympathetic system will periodically switch off.
Yeah.
But majority of our life is kept in the sympathetic system.
Yeah.
And that results in disease. So it's it is down to us as parents to
help our children and nurture them into
exactly.
Kate, I could talk to you all day. I'm aware.
Grow out of it, but they don't.
No.
They learn ways to hide it. Is what they do. Yeah. They say kids are resilient. They're not as resilient as what people would like to think that they are. Sadly, they are not. That is it's a cop out for, and I'm guilty of that.
Me too. Yeah.
It is a cop out though. And it's disrespectful really to our children, because it's damaging them massively by saying, oh, it's okay, they're resilient, they'll bounce back. No, they won't bounce back at all. Yeah, they may do, but they're highly likely they won't. So it'll affect them in some way in their life, and that's why people end up having addictions growing up and getting into trouble with the police, or all these things are linked to that. It's
Right, I'm gonna have to wrap it up, I think.
Yeah.
I've left my children long enough. Their dad is with them, I believe. So Kate, I could talk to you all day. I'm sure this is not the last time that you will be on. I'm sure this is not the last time our paths will cross. But as I say, if you can leave your links for everything in the comments, that'd be great. Especially that, the free workshop you've got going off next week. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for this fascinating insight into what you do, and I wish you well with the book that comes out in the new year.
Thank you.
And good luck with your business plans here forward.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. So that was Kate Beasley, everybody. She's going to leave her links in the comments, as I said. What a fascinating lady she is. She's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure her book is going to fly off the shelves and out of that Kindle store. So I will see you next week. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm not in isolation, or the kids aren't in isolation in the next 10 days, and I can actually get some work done. I will be back next week, as I said, with Brew at Two. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for watching. If you're on replay, don't forget, if you want to leave a comment and you're watching on replay, just put #Team Replay, and I will see you next week. Thank you for watching.